Welcome to the IP2 podcast. I'm Shea Ashby, and as always, I'm joined by Felix Chung. Felix, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good, Shay. I'm in Atlantic Canada, I think, for the last time for the foreseeable future. So a little bit tired, bittersweet in a way, but excited to record again. How are you doing, Shay?
I'm doing good. I'm exhausted after this last weekend. I
Yeah.
kind of feel like you have more cause to be more exhausted than I am because of your traveling, and you
No.
basically did the exact same amount of time in flesh and blood this weekend as I did. So, not that I can't be tired, but
Yeah, and it's
uh,
not like you need an excuse to be tired. I mean, if we're going to compare things, you have a kid and all that and other responsibilities. So
yeah,
let's
I totally
let's
didn't want to be at work today. Man, I was just like
oh,
just sitting at my desk for half the day, being like a zombie. I'm like, I should just go home and get some sleep. So.
yeah, it's tough after because we're in the middle of competitive season right now. Weekend 2 of 3 of ProQuests just wrapped up,
Mhm.
which included both ProQuests assigned to our city in Calgary. And I feel now similar to after coming home from a big convention like a calling or nationals. There's always a little bit of a letdown after your entire weekend is filled with games and good times and competition and stress. And now you're back to,
Mundane
hello,
life.
Mr. Manager. Yeah.
Yeah, it totally like at some point on the Sunday, you kind of come to that realization that tomorrow, like you said, is back to the grind.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a letdown. You don't really want it to end, even though you're exhausted, your body hurts. But
Yeah.
still, it's good. It was a good weekend. I don't know.
Yeah.
I had a great weekend. How was your weekend?
It was really good, but let's actually go back in time because it was the second week of ProQuests. We actually both got the chance to compete in one the previous weekend,
Hmm.
and that one was up in Leduc with our friend Travis from Dream Escape
Yep.
hosting. And we've had him on the podcast before. He actually did a really cool thing. He did a back-to-back event with the ProQuest on Saturday, and then he held what was that event? A team sealed or a team
Yeah.
draft?
Bright Lights Team Sealed.
Nice.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of a team sealed.
Yeah.
You purchased a box as a team of 3, and then you open your box and build 3 decks out of the entire box of cards that you get. So you can put together some pretty solid decks this way, and it was a lot of fun to sort the cards and work on 3 different decks with your team.
Yeah, so Travis is, as expected, especially after our interview with him, just finding fun ways to give back to our community and just get more people in his store at the same time. So
Yep.
I wasn't able to make that event, but I was able to make the ProQuest. So yeah, how did that event go for you?
The ProQuest for me, I guess I sort of did lock into Icelander.
Hmm.
I think a couple of weeks before the ProQuest. I've been playing Icelander for a long time, but I
Hmm.
change my build all the time. So the only thing that's kind of familiar is Icelander herself, because she has, I would say, like 3 different builds that people play, like a bully list with the attack actions, the arcane variant, and then there's also like one that runs more weather veins trying to hit fuses and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I'm very familiar with the arcane, so that's what I ran this weekend. And I didn't do very well. I didn't do nearly as well as I thought I was going to do. I hoped to top 8, honestly, but I went 1-4. I had a rough day. It just kind of felt like everything I presented wasn't meaningful enough,
Right.
and Wizard producing 6 to 7, 8 damage a turn vanilla is not enough to stop some of these aggro decks in the format currently, and they would just kind of take it, maybe lose a card, and then proceed to still push 12 plus damage a turn against me. So it was quite the struggle that weekend.
Yeah, the numbers seem pretty high, and there were quite a few people experimenting with Dash IO, or I
Yes.
mean, now affectionately known as Dashio or Dio. I don't know what nickname's going to stick
Stick.
here.
Yeah.
I know one of our locals was hated Starvo because it sounded like he was starving, and
Right.
but I forget what his alternative to Starva was, though, and that's, I think, a testament to how unsuccessful those efforts were to fend off the moniker.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I wonder what the nickname for Dashio will be in the end.
Yeah,
But
I think
yeah,
Dashio's fine. I don't mind
yeah.
Dashio.
But yeah, is
Kind
that a
of see it.
bad matchup for Icelander? I know OG Dash is not great.
Um, I didn't actually play into any
Okay,
dashes that much.
got it.
There, it felt like there's times where Icelander was effective. Like the one frostbite really doesn't matter, but if you can, again, because I was playing a more arcane focus list, I had more red ice cards. My goal was to keep Channel Lake Frigid around as long as I could.
Yep,
And if I could string together um, turns of Channel Lake Frigid, then I could do well. But if I couldn't get a Channel Lake to stick or even find one, then I just
yep,
get run over by any aggro deck. And Dash was the people that were running Dash were putting together 20 plus damage turns with a maximum velocity, no problem. So
right.
yeah, there was some definitely difficulties slowing them down.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you? How was your ProQuest in Leduc?
Yeah, I mean, it went surprisingly well. I guess I tend to do pretty well up in Dream Escape. So it always starts with a loss, round one.
Yeah.
So in this case, it was against Ethan, who is an excellent Dromai player up
Yeah.
from the Edmonton area. Really great player. We, competed in nationals. He was on stream a couple times, as I understand as well. Um, and yeah, she completely demolished me in the mirror. And then I was lucky enough to win out from there to get top eight. Played a lot of great games on the way. Ran into friend of the podcast and two-time guest Andrew Padleski toward the end of Swiss, and yeah, it was a good day. I played Dromai, just a pretty aggressive version of Dromai that I'm comfortable playing.
Yeah.
I just like being proactive in tournaments like this, and
Mhm.
yeah, it turned out very well for me. Yeah, always thankful, I guess, to achieve that result in a very very tough field.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
have you been practicing, like, have you been making it to armories leading up to this ProQuest, or do you play on Talishar? Where do you get your practice in? Because I don't, like we've mentioned before, you and I don't get to go to events together a lot. So I know you and I haven't been playing. So I was wondering if you were getting reps in, or just you've been playing her long enough since Oldham LL that you're getting comfortable with her.
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. The aggressive list of Dromai doesn't play as weirdly as Big Dragon.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it is a lot of fundamentals, except specifically for the Bravo matchup, which has a very specific game plan.
Mm-hmm.
So all I did was every other week when I was at home, I'd go to the armory on Tuesdays that I normally go to. And on the off weeks when I was away, I'd usually actually get the chance to practice at least once, either in the armory here or at a home gathering of people that practice as well. So I do prefer to practice in person. I do not have the concentration or discipline to play on Talishar, especially against random people.
Yeah.
And playing as Dromai, it is so frustrating. Like, because sometimes like I'm attacking with Asvalai, you know, I'm designating the target of the physical attack as one Ashwing. I'm designating the arcane damage to two other Ashwings, and then Talishar will mess up which Ashwings are getting attacked and then
Yeah.
close the chain on me, and I lose my action point. And it's just, it's very frustrating to play as Droma
Yeah.
on Talishar. I full shout out to the devs for the hard work that they do.
Absolutely.
I think it's not for me.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
A little off topic. I get questions all the time about rules interactions.
Oh,
And usually it stems from something not working on Talishar.
yeah.
And again, not trying to throw shade at Talishar, because they've built an amazing client. It allows
Mhm.
people to play the game whenever they want. But I do always tell people to not use Talishar as a rules reference, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that are coded incorrectly or not coded, or they haven't got to, or bugs, whatever. So yeah, that's always my recommendation.
Yeah, and Flesh and Blood is a difficult game. There's new
Yes.
interactions, being asked about all the time. It's definitely no shade on the developers, but it can lead to some awkward situations as judges when people have the wrong
Yes,
expectations.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, like just playing a deck like Redline Dromai, it's a bit of a privilege for someone like me that's been playing for a long time, just to be able to fall back on just calculating the numbers and the base value, and just having having a deck like that for someone like me that doesn't have the most time to practice all the time. It's pretty comfortable because, you know, for the majority of your matchups, all you need to do is work out the values and you'll be pretty okay into them.
Yeah.
And just to know what silver bullets you're bringing for which matchups and all that.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I never really looked at it that way. I'm actually scared to play like aggro decks that have like attack for 4, block for 2. I understand the math behind it, but I inherently play defensively and want to do things, and I find it very difficult to switch from a defensive style deck that wants to just block and set up turns, and you know that they're the power cards and your pivot turns. And the little time I spend with aggro decks, I just kind of look at everything. I'm like, it all feels like power cards, but not blocking and letting on hits happen just kind of scare me because I feel like I'm going to get blown out. So it's interesting to hear your delivery about sort of switching from mindset to working out values and figuring out your silver bullets, and also knowing matchups of what you're supposed to block no matter what.
Yep. No, for sure. It's very interesting because I started as a very defensive player, but I completely broke that down, abandoned it in search of pure numbers. Just like, okay, set aside all my feelings. Let's just see what makes the biggest number. And then I rebuilt it up to say, okay, numbers are maybe 75% of it.
Yeah.
But let's understand the context. And I'm sure the very good players understand that way better than I do, but I feel like at least I'm starting to grasp some of that flavor, which is pretty helpful. So
Nice.
yeah, made it into top 8, got a cold foil dash, which is gorgeous in person. Man, the foiling on these heroes gets better each and every single time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and eventually made it up to top 4, where I was defeated in, I have to say, the favorite game of Flesh and Blood I've played in a very long time, against the eventual winner, Jacob, on Bravo. It's interesting because Dromai versus Bravo is one of those matchups where there's the difference in approaches is so important. And I swear this is one of the matchups which they call a 90-90, because all the Bravo players say it's like unlosable, and so many Dromai players say it's unlosable.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm sure if you queue into Talishar randomly against, you know, an average player, and you're a very good player, you probably have that 90% win rate. But I'm not saying I'm the best player at Dromai, but man, like it just comes down to, can Dromai get there and execute her inevitable, you know, end game doom stack, whichever chosen doom stack you choose, or can Bravo kill you? And he knew his role, I knew my role, and in the end of the day, it came down to dominated lethal for exact, which was very satisfying because I think I would have killed him. After that, yeah.
How did you feel going into the matchup? Were you nervous? Were you comfortable?
Oh, I was very comfortable. I had never lost to a Bravo before that. Like, he was the first, and he was a very good player.
He's a very good player. Whenever I listen to him talk about the hero that he's playing, because he invests his time very deeply into whether it's Bravo or Dash. He seems to be very knowledgeable in all of his matchups, and he knows his game plans and what he's trying to do and how to execute it. So, you know, it honestly doesn't surprise me that he knew what to do going into that matchup.
Yeah, exactly. And if I have one regret, is that I had not blocked with my Flame Scale Furnace the entire game. And I died to exact lethal, so I did have some stranded value there that would have made the difference in that case. But, you know, it's those little decisions that you make throughout the course of a game that will make the difference between victory and defeat. And that's quite a good lesson for me because, I mean, you want to preserve your equipment against Bravo, and
Mhm.
that's the lesson that I had in my head. But once your life total gets low enough, the crush effect doesn't matter. You know, the
Yeah.
on hit is death. Like, don't be too miserly with it either.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Fair.
just yeah, really really great game. Um, but yeah, that was Saturday for me. Anything else about the Saturday for you?
No, I don't think so. Mine was pretty low key. It ended early, and we just went for dinner after the top 8 was announced. So
Yeah,
yeah, just hung out with everybody. Look, had good times over at Boston Pizza there.
awesome. What about the Sunday event that I had to miss on?
Yeah. So the event starts. There's 18 people, so 6
Mm-hmm.
teams. So actually, really good numbers to be honest, because we had perfect player count, perfect team count to play somebody different every round. We drafted our box and played our games. I did not do very good. I lost my first game. So I needed Andrew and Ethan to win, which they did. So we were 1-0. And then in round 2, all 3 of us won.
Nice.
So that was pretty sweet. And then in round 3 for, all the marbles, I lost again. And then Andrew also lost and Ethan won. So I just needed my win to shift to game 3 instead of game 2, and
If
we would
only it
have won.
worked like that. Yeah.
So yeah, no, it was a lot of fun though. I've never played a team sealed event before, so Andrew was sort of our captain in the middle, and he was able to watch our games and give advice and help play through turns that were complicated, which is really neat. I honestly felt like I was cheating. It was the weirdest thing for me. But like, hey, what do you think about my hand? Here's what I'm thinking I should play out. And then you have this little conversation, and it's just not something you're normally allowed to do. So it kind of feels like you're, like I said, cheating. So that
Yeah.
was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's really comforting, and honestly, that's one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of formats like Two-Headed Giant, like 2v2 in
Mhm.
some capacity, for like someone trying to introduce their partner to a game or a friend, something like that. Because yeah, just having someone to talk over lines with is, I mean, it gives you a huge boost.
Oh yeah.
Even if it, even if they say, yeah, that's good, it gives you so much confidence that, because the game's so complicated that,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a
Well,
great feeling.
I was on Max, which he is fairly straightforward to
Mm,
play. However, his resource numbers are, I found, the difficult part to be
hmm.
putting together about, boosting and making hyperdrivers and getting those resources. And so he helped me step through a few turns. And like you said, yeah,
Nice, yeah.
sometimes he was like, yeah, this is the line I would do. And you're like, cool, awesome. I'm glad. But like having such a high level player beside me offer me advice was really good for me. And it was like great to see other lines, because it's always hard to see. I always find it hard to see more than one or two lines of play, no matter how long I sit there and look at my cards.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I hope we get to do things like that more often, and that they help build a community as well in that
Yeah.
regard.
That's awesome. Well, huge shout out to Travis and Dream Escape up in Leduc. And yeah, fingers crossed there'll be another event and hopefully I'll be able to make that one. Is
Yeah.
there anything else on that weekend before we move on?
No, I think that's everything.
All right. Well, yeah. So this past weekend was the doubleheader CC ProQuest in Calgary on Saturday and then limited ProQuest on Sunday. So I guess we can start with
Saturday.
Saturday. Yeah, I was the judge for the CC event. We had 31 people. We had a crew come in from Winnipeg, which was awesome. So huge shout out to the community, the Flesh and Blood community from Winnipeg, Grant, and the others that came down, and Bill LePage, another guest that we had on earlier, also from Winnipeg. Great scene, and 31 people overall.
Did you know
Man,
that the Winnipeg people were coming?
I did not. It was a
Okay,
huge
yeah, huge
surprise.
surprise.
Yeah,
Because I think Paul originally said there was over 40 people, because we were
yeah,
talking about there being 7 rounds,
Yeah.
and couldn't figure out where these bonus people came from
Yeah.
until we
No,
learned.
it was really cool. It's really cool to see people coming in from other places, sharing stories,
Mm-hmm.
sharing different metas, and I heard all the time, wow, Calgary has a lot of Bravos. Like, yeah, welcome to Calgary.
Yeah, welcome to Calgary.
That
Yeah.
is what it's gonna be
Yeah.
like. You're gonna run into a few. It's always been like that. Um, so yeah, no, it was a great turnout, very smooth event. I guess Shea, how did you do as a player in this one?
Well, the weekend prior, I was on Icelander, and it didn't
Mhm.
go well. So I had been practicing another hero for a couple of weeks leading up to this event, and I showed up on Riptide, which is probably
Mhm.
not most people's first choice. I figured with you and Ethan not coming that the Dromai count would be low. So I knew that all I had to do was dodge Dromais, and maybe I'd be okay. And there was also, in my mind, only one wizard. Again, another matchup I need to dodge. Outside of that, I was fairly comfortable into any aggro matchup, and I had a game plan for Bravo if that was the case. I ended up going 4-1 on the day, making top 8. So my loss in Swiss was to a wizard, so I wasn't able to dodge the wizard the whole day. In fact, actually, my first round was against one of the players from Winnipeg, Wei Yang. He was on Lexi, and it was a very close matchup.
Mm.
I got through halfway through the game, and I didn't actually realize that he was playing his third 3 of a kind. And so I was like, well, if I can survive this turn, I've dodged or I've gotten through a lot of the power cards. And yeah, it was a battle to the end. Like, it's not like a free win into Lexi or anything like that, but I was able to get there. I kind of felt bad for him, to be honest. You fly from another city to come play in a semi-major tournament or whatever you want to call the ProQuests, and you get paired into a Riptide. Like, I don't think anybody's expecting that they're going to get paired into a Riptide.
No.
So I felt kind of bad, but you know what? He did really good. He ended up 4-1ing as well on the day, so he ended up making it to top 8 anyways, even though he lost to me in the first round. So good old submarining, that is very popular here in Alberta.
Yeah. So you made top cut.
Yes, I did
With Riptide.
with Riptide.
You missed top cut with Icelander. So I would like to reiterate, this is peak Shea Ashby. You play a good deck, you don't get any results, but you play Riptide and you get there to
make things
top
happen.
8.
Yeah.
You're just living in an alternate reality here.
Yeah, I mean, Jem was, very nice to me that day. I think if I got paired into the Dromais or Bravos, it could have been a very different day.
Yeah.
So I got a very good matchup spread through Jem. So I recognize that. And then we cut to top 8, and I get paired against my first round opponent again. I thought I was actually at the disadvantage this time because I feel like if you play somebody and you lose to them, you can change your strategy. You can work out where you lost and a new game plan to win. And the person that won doesn't have that opportunity in that window. The people that are performing well are typically, I would say people that are playing well that day and can work out those little things. So I was actually nervous about this round because it's not like Lexi is a free win. Like, anybody can just play Rain Razor, 3 of a kind, and there's nothing you can do. So, so eventually I got there. We had lots of people watching. It was a very tight match. There was one point where it was like 16-6, and all I was doing was blocking, and it didn't feel like I was in a very good place. And I was able to get a turn off where I sent like 10 or 12 damage with a Blood Rot attached to it. And so, kind of, I guess, for a little bit of perspective on the game, he was trying really hard to set up 5 and 6 card turns. Like, he would stop attacking me, and then arsenal a card, have the ponder trigger or whatever. And so he tried really hard to set up those cards. Then going back, he took the 10 damage plus the Blood Rot, which brought him down into my health range. And I was like, I thought I was going to die there. I could be misremembering the timing, but there was a turn in the game, and it might have been this turn where I got to play a Frailty Trap from hand, which turned off a 4 go again attack. And then he played a Heat Seeker, and I got to play another Frailty Trap from hand, which turned the Seeker down into a 3 attack. So it turned off his whole turn and bought a lot of tempo for me and gave me a lot of space because he stopped attacking at that point because there was no point in sending another 1-cost arrow for 3 damage.
Wow.
So, and again, it was very tight, very close. Lots of people watching, very nervous because I'm always like, are people judging my poor decisions and what I'm doing wrong? And it was a very fun game. His matchups were my favorite of the day because they were very back and forth, questioning my blocking. Should I be blocking here? Should I be attacking? Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, huge shout outs to your opponent. I think, Wei Yang from Winnipeg. We're so sorry you came to Calgary and had to play Riptide.
So then in top 4, I meet Isaiah, who was my round 2 opponent on Kano, and it's a non-game. I'm on AB1. I got 6 blues in my deck. There's literally nothing I can do. All me doing attacking for 9 every turn allows him to just filter through his deck to find the cards he wants to find.
Yeah.
So, so shout out to Isaiah for making it to the finals. 2 ProQuests in a row for him. He made Kelowna finals and unfortunately lost there. And then also unfortunately lost again on Saturday to another Bravo.
Yeah.
So shout out to Max for winning the Ogres PQ.
Yeah. What a great day. Yeah. And from my perspective, a lot of simple rules questions, but nothing too crazy from a penalty perspective. So yeah, our local events typically run incredibly smoothly.
Mm-hmm. No failed deck checks.
No failed deck checks. I think all the threatening people in the weeks leading up, putting the fear into them, seemed to pay off. So the last thing I want to do in a deck check is discover an issue. Yeah. I did have to issue some IP2s for deck list issues during the PTI event at Canadian Nationals.
Okay.
It doesn't feel good for anyone. Yeah. Luckily, the players in that instance were very understanding. They said, it was on me. I missed writing this card. I can see how, someone could use that ambiguity to their advantage. So everyone was very understanding, but still it's not, it's not something you like doing. So every time I do a deck check, I'm a little nervous because I don't want to find anything. Yeah. I mean, I'll do what I need to do, right? But you never want to.
You just never want to feel like the bad guy, right? For somebody's mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you know the person, right? And it's a tough situation to be in. So yeah, at the end of the day, a lot of fun. Then moving on to Sunday, I think you were the head judge for the draft event, and how did that go?
This is my first time judging a draft event.
Yep.
As well as TOing an event. So I've never run Gem before. There's always been somebody at the store that does it. This venue at Selly's, their play space is on the 2nd floor. It's sort of like an afterthought to his original business model. So it's very separated from the store. So he can't TO it. It's literally impossible. So I took it upon myself to go to roll, and I was honestly very nervous because I didn't want to screw anything up. We were talking about this before, that the last thing I want to do is screw something up in an event like a PQ by clicking on the wrong button or going to the wrong page. So I definitely leaned on you and Arthur and Tyler for assistance in Gem because I was very scared about clicking on the back to tournament button because it felt like it was just going to erase the round. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'd never done a draft, and we had talked about some strategies and things that I should do and should not do for the draft event. So I do appreciate your knowledge and insight there to help run the event as logistically as easy as possible for me, and make it smooth for the players. And I hope that came through for the players. I feel like it was smooth. It did take it was a long day, but I don't feel like there were giant issues, and I feel like it went very smooth, and people were the players were really good, honestly.
Yeah, draft registration is a scary process for a lot of people, and especially in bright lights. A lot of people don't know how to organize their card pool. Like people may
Yeah.
not realize that there's actually sub pools, like all the mechanologist cards are grouped together. And the way that I tell is that there's a little lightning bolt where the pitch symbol is, right? And then the
Okay.
items have like two little wires. And the scrap cards, have this scrappy looking thing by the pit. I don't
Yep.
even know how to describe it. But a lot of people don't even know that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're confused about how do you organize these cards? And they all just say mechanologist. Yeah.
Yep. There's 4 different borders that make it very simple to distinguish between like mech cards, items, evos and whatnot. So, but it's funny too, because along with that inability to organize, I heard a few people question other players' organization piles when they were verifying the registration pool. So that was pretty funny because people were like, "What is this mess?"
You mean you're not supposed to shuffle your whole pool to randomize it before?
No, apparently not. So I didn't get too many difficult judge calls. It was actually very light on judge calls compared to my previous events in Classic Constructed. And I wonder if that's twofold. One, this set isn't as complicated as other sets. And 2, you're only playing with 3 heroes and their nuances as opposed to 20 some heroes that you could potentially play against. And not seeing interactions between 2 heroes ever is a thing people, might have never experienced because you don't play against a certain hero or whatever. So judge wise, very light, I think. There was one solid call that you and I had talked about afterwards.
Yep.
But the logistics of the running the event was tiresome and a lot to make sure that, I was trying to like be as efficient as possible for everybody, making sure the rounds were going smoothly and people were getting packs and had cards, their pools to write down on and stuff like that. So yeah. How was the day for you?
Yeah, no, it seemed to run really well. And big shout out. Running draft events is very tiring because you're always, you have to get people seated into pods. Then there's another one, so you have to do it all over again, and you have to pass out product, and there's a lot more to it logistically than running a CC event when everyone just brings their deck, so you don't need to worry about that kind of stuff.
And even that was a thing that we were figuring out on the day of, was how the seating goes. Because sure, it just tells you seat 1 through 8, but what does that look like physically? So as somebody who's never looked at it before, definitely had to figure that out so that we were seating people appropriately.
Absolutely. And the day went really well. I think our community still needs to do some practice in drafts. I don't think our community values Tekla enough. It feels like the correct distribution of heroes should be like 4-2-2, with 4 Teklos and 2 of the rest. But we were consistently getting, it seems like in all the pods, we were getting something like 3-3-2. So the Teklos were stronger than they should have been, quote unquote, and other heroes were not as strong.
I know there was a 4-IO table at the start of the day.
People love Dash.
They do. Down here, people love Dash down here.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it's great to love Dash, probably not mathematically correct for this limited format.
Fair enough, yeah.
So, pod 1, I recognized that Tekla was underdrafted and, had a very good pool. So, I was lucky enough to 3-0 that pod, and that I was able to squeak into top 8 despite going 1-2 in the next pod because of the tie breaks and all of that, having so many wins early. So made it to top 8 again, got another dash. So probably looking
two
to
dashes
trade it.
now.
Yeah, trying to trade it probably for a max. And
I'm sure you could find a trade easy.
And couldn't make it past top 8 though. So overall, like really, really fun event, and great to have 2 tier 2 tournaments in Calgary again. It's a great feeling. And
I guess, I mean, we've already shouted out the last 2 PQ winners, so congratulations to Emily for winning the Selly's draft PQ. So she played
Yeah.
awesome. And it was a 2 Teklovasen or a Teklovasen mirror in the finals. So I think as the day went on, people realized how strong Teklovasen really was.
Yeah.
And in the final draft pod, there was only 1 max. And then I think there was 2 dashes or something like that. And then the rest were Teklos.
Okay.
So I think pretty close to like what you were describing is probably the right
so
amount.
It balanced out a bit. Yeah, huge shout out to Emily. She's been playing for a little while now, for sure, and just very, very mechanically strong player, especially.
Yeah.
Like, she very rarely makes errors in gameplay that I've seen. And I think that's very well suited for this format. This format seems pretty tight. There isn't like a Phi that can run you over, and there's nothing you can do. It seems like every hero is pretty fair, for the most part. I guess Dash does have some very explosive stuff out of nowhere, but certainly compared to other formats, the huge blowout turns don't seem to be there.
Yeah, but like anything, even with Dash, like if you get killed from 8 because you don't block a 4 attack and they red boom grenade, you learn. Like once you learn that you can die from 8 against Dash, you think differently. So where there's sometimes where I think you feel like you get blown out, I think there's a way around it too, to certain degrees, to be able to like not get blown out. I did hear a few people on the day be like, "Yep, GG," and I look over and they're holding like 3 cards in their hand still. Like, guess you can't block, hey?
Yeah, it's stranded value, right? Is one of those things that people don't recognize, but the big value of something like dominate or a combat trick is you can win the game and your opponent has 9 life left in their hand because they didn't think to block or they couldn't block. That's where you get the big value. That's why we always tell beginner players, like, a lot of times you overvalue dominate because your opponent didn't want to block anyway, or they just wanted to block with 1 card anyway, so your dominate was meaningless. But at the end of the game, the dominate is winning you the game because of the stranded value. Like, you just stole 9 additional value from them, and they died. So yeah, it's a great concept.
Yeah, so it was good. It was a long day.
Yeah.
I was like about 10 hours. Plus we did the 9 hours the day before, and Thomas and Karen had a party. And so we were there till like 1 o'clock in the morning. So
wow.
I was tired. That's why I'm tired today. It's been a long weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's been a very fun weekend. I'm not going to lie. I had a lot of fun this weekend.
It's so nice that we could get ours scheduled back to back. So yeah, people from out of town could just make a weekend of it and have a little mini convention kind of feeling. So I can't wait for the next season.
Yeah. So moving on, I guess. Very simple topic. Lexi is leaving Classic Constructed. I believe as of November 6th. So next week, as of this recording, Lexi will no longer be a part of the format. What do you think?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. Lexi had a very interesting arc from a very scrappy underdog. I remember the first time Yuki won the first Canadian Nationals on Lexi. Everyone was shocked. Like, wow, Lexi's playable? Like, who would play such a jank hero? Like, and Lexi was always a specialist then, like a tool that you use into a specific meta. You tailor the suite of arrows, and you can take down a tournament if they over-specialize. And for a long time, she had that underdog status, and actually, like, a big soft spot in my heart because I managed to win a tournament because of that as well, like before Outsiders. So she evolved from that into just a monster of going above rate, which is an interesting heel turn for a hero to go from a specialist tool to just an overall best aggro deck in the format from numbers and from on-hit effects. So yeah, I think it's with mixed feelings that I'm seeing this LL, but very interested to see what the next Wide Ranger will be and the next version of Lexi, because I'm sure she'll be coming back in some form. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I'm not one of those people that's usually hard up on anything leaving.
Yeah.
Because like again, like in the Starvo days, everybody was, can't wait till Starvo leaves, can't wait till Chain leaves, can't wait till Rosetta Thorn is gone. And now we're in the can't wait till Lexi goes. They don't bother me. I feel like that's where I enjoy the game in a weird way, I guess. Like,
Yep.
I like to counterplay meta decks. That's kind of like what I do,
Yep.
I guess. So it's part of why I picked Riptide this weekend.
Yep.
I figured there was going to be lots of Lexis and Katsus, and I wanted to be prepared for that. And like I said earlier, I knew there was going to be less Dromais. So I don't mind it. I don't mind being able to be the guy that's tailoring a deck to beat another deck.
Yep.
And I don't care how bad that hero is, because if it just gives me the percentage points and where I think the mass of players is going to be, I'm okay with that.
Yep.
So now I guess for me, I have to wait to find out what shakes out with Lexi leaving the format now. So yeah, so that's kind of how I feel about it, I guess.
Yeah.
So I don't mind it. I don't like the idea of like being upset at something existing. I'm not usually so tied down by certain thoughts that I get angry and super vocal about certain things, like a lot of people do on social media, which is fine. That's your opinion, but I just kind of live in it. It is what it is. It exists. So let's be mindful of that and figure out, do you want to play it or do you want to beat it, and just go from there.
Yeah, like Ranger is an interesting class to have at the top because the class does have inherent weaknesses that you can target. Like you were saying earlier, Ranger is very weak to frailty tokens. If it's a wide Ranger, your frailty gets so much value. And also Ranger has no fridge, so that some Guardians are attacking her that way, just knowing she can't block well.
Yep.
Like it's a lot different feeling of a top meta deck because of those weaknesses that can be exploited, versus when the top meta deck is something that has a fridge and can go wide and still has all this armor. Like, she doesn't feel invincible even if she's the top dog.
Yeah.
And I mean, she has high roll potential. If you get double rained with a 3 of a kind, then yeah, it happens, I guess. Yep. It happens with any top aggro deck, though, like be it a Channel Force, Briar Turn, or pick your poison among the other meta decks, like Double Art of War, Fi. Like, all of these aggro decks have the ability to high roll you as well.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, everybody talks that Dromai is going to be the new top dog, which then brings Ninja in. I mean, we're not a competitive podcast, but if that's the world that we live in, then Riptide still might be an okay choice. If Dromai's rise to the top and then they start to fall once the ninjas come into play, I'll be waiting in the shadows with Riptide.
I just love how devoted you are to Riptide, of all heroes out there. But,
yeah,
we're gonna see you be the world champion someday on like this unplayable hero.
I'm not gonna lie that I didn't have thoughts if I didn't meet Isaiah in the top 4, there was a chance that I could have won the PQ on Riptide.
Yeah. Those pesky wizard players.
I know. Well, he was right though. Like, we had this conversation. He's like, I'm going to take Kano, and I'm like, I'm going to make people respect wizard, and that's totally fine, right? PT1, people thought Kano was garbage, and look how well he performed in PT1. So it's no different than me making a anti-aggro meta call. He made a nobody brings AB meta call, and he was not wrong.
Yep.
So yeah, it's good stuff.
Want to talk about heavy hitters a little bit?
Yeah, sure, we can talk about it. I don't have much knowledge in this regard other than a few spoilers came out. We know that there's going to be Warrior, Guardian, and Brute spoilers, I guess. I do have a question, though. I'm wondering if there's going to be a 4th hero or 4th class, like they hid the Assassin, or is it just going to be those 3?
I'm kind of leaning towards just the 3, but we'll see. I'm very excited because I love Guardians, but these 3 classes are typically not the classes that you play.
Nope.
Is this something that you think you'll be more on the sidelines of and just focusing on limited, or wait and see?
Probably. There's a chance I pick up something like Warrior. Always a fan of Warrior classes in anything.
Right.
Kind of like, I guess initial feelings, kind of like my Bright Lights feelings. I'm not a mechanologist player.
Yep.
I'm excited for mechanologist players, so I am again excited for warrior, guardian, brute players that they
Yep.
get more support and want that to be, their thing. So it's super cool for me. I'm okay with being on the sidelines and watching it. So we'll see how the set pans out. I don't mind waiting, and if it looks cool and I want to jump into warrior, then I will. Like you said, you're excited about guardian. Do you have any interest in the other two classes that we know about?
Yeah, I mean, I want brute to be really good, so we'll see. And I do like warrior, the play style as well. Like I like all of these classes. They're the bread and butter WTR original
Yeah.
classes. So there's a soft spot in my heart for all of those. So I can't wait to see what the new weapons will be. I hope they're like token weapons or they're just available
Mm-hmm.
to all the heroes. Like, yeah, I'm really excited to see what's coming out here.
Perfect. I don't know. There's not a lot right now on the topic, so I'm not sure how much more we can really speak on this. So should we move on to our random topics of the day, unless you got something else?
Yeah, let's do it. Last minute audible for my random topic here because you brought it up. Fantasy archetypes. Many people that grew up playing D&D or watching Lord of the Rings or anything, I think many of them feel drawn to a specific fantasy archetype and consistently choose that archetype when imagining themselves in a fantasy setting or maybe creating a character in a game.
Mm-hmm.
So did you mention for yourself, typically you're a warrior, or are you typically something like that?
When it, I, warrior or spellcaster, so like wizard or sorcerer, typically those would be my flavors. Just depends on how I feel. Being a
Interesting.
badass armor wearing sword wielding warrior is super cool, but then the gifts of magic, man, just being all powerful, being able to create and destroy stuff at will, I don't know, would be pretty rad in real life, I think.
And you said it's depending on your mood. Is it like 50-50, or like are you typically in the mood for one? Because not too many people actually I've asked this question say either like the no magic class or the pure magic class. Those are two sides of the spectrum there.
So, I mean, I started playing fantasy games in like D&D you mentioned with friends.
Yeah.
Moving into Diablo, which eventually had a multiplayer, into EverQuest, which had multiplayer, into WoW, which had multiplayer. And honestly, at the end of the day, my usual class was Phil. I would just take any role that needed to be filled. So I enjoy more letting other people play what they desire to play, and then being sort of that glue that holds the band together, because that's what was needed. And then if that's what I get to choose, then I know that I'm valuable to the people that I'm playing with inherently.
I mean, that's very noble of you.
It's not,
But
not meant to
that's
be noble.
also,
But
this is supposed to be your power fantasy. Like this
I
this
know.
reminds me of the scene in The Office where, it's like, Dwight, your fantasy is to be the assistant to the devil. Like,
Right.
like come on, like,
Yeah.
why Phil?
I don't know. It's just the way it is. Like, I don't know. In Skyrim, I was like a ninja magic user,
Okay. Yeah.
shooting bows from the dark. And if you had to, cast spells, I guess now that I kind of think about it, probably mostly a spellcaster of arcane in nature. I think if I had to pick one,
Yep.
I just, I totally dig the idea of maybe sort of like the Jedi style, light and fast, but you can use powers to do, whatever you need to do, I guess.
Okay, so like you wouldn't want to be just a wizard with a bunch of books. Like
No.
you'd want
Nope.
to. Okay.
I don't know. I've always liked the idea of summoning like your weapon and your shield.
Okay.
And so if you wander around, you look like a normal person, but then you can cast spells and summon stuff, and all of a sudden you're a badass.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's really interesting. That's
hidden badassery. How about you? What's your archetype?
Guess. One guess.
Cleric.
Close.
Paladin.
Paladin. Yeah. I mean, I teased this a while back when I said I was lawful good, like as a person, right? Like
That's true.
And I've always been drawn to the paladin archetype. I know paladins get a bad rap. They're often, just satirized as being lawful stupid, which is one way
Well,
to play paladins, like for
so
sure.
slightly off topic. Last
Yeah.
night I was watching Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves,
Mm-hmm.
and the paladin trope that they
Love it.
did in that movie is
So
amazing.
good.
So
So good.
so good. But I mean,
No,
if that's your jam, that's your jam. That's
not
okay.
only a paladin, but a stereotypical DM's player character. Just
In which regard?
big spoilers for the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie, which was fun. It was a lot of fun, and I'd recommend it. But just so for a trope for bad DMs is that they self-insert their own player characters into the story because he just came in, told the party what to do, was completely overpowered, solved the problem, and then walked away. Like, isn't this a DM player character for a bad
I guess
DM?
so.
Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, like, yeah, I don't know. I always liked, the class philosophy of paladins, like being the brunt of it, taking the hits, being the face of the party and the moral compass. Like that's big for me. That aligns with a lot of how I want to be as a person. I don't always live up to those expectations. And
You don't.
sometimes you get into conflict with the more chaotic people that that you surround yourself with, but that's okay.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
You don't have the desire. Like, this is the moment in time where you get to be somebody that you can't be, and that mischievousness doesn't creep into you. You don't want to like break into that house and find out what's in there, or go steal the mayor's secret documents and find out what he's up to. That's you don't want to have that little bit there.
I do, but there's also, there's ways to work within the confines of the law to get the result you want.
Okay.
There's some flexibility.
Sure. Okay, right? I'm glad. Okay. Not everybody as a paladin has flexibility. They become this staunch idiot that
that's
cannot
going
waver.
Back to lawful stupid, right? Like you have to know the boundaries, right? You have to have fun with it. I mean, I guess it depends on your setting and which deity you're the paladin of as well. So
yeah.
Anyway,
nice.
It's pretty interesting, yeah. Because my wife, she says she's always a ranger, and I get that. She loves animals, like lots of different reasons why that class appeals to her. It's just interesting how a lot of people that aren't even gamers stereotypically, though, when I ask them like, hey, in Lord of the Rings, like, which character of the party do you identify with? And they're like,
sure.
Oh yeah, I'm Legolas or I'm Gimli. Like, it's just instantly you can envision yourself like what role and you want to be in that environment, which is cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a random topic for us, Shea?
I do. It's, I guess, is like only a tiny bit more serious than yours, since you audibled the fantasy archetypes on me. So I'm going to bring it back a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
This week, some friends came into town for the Tool concert. I met in the early, probably about 2003. And they moved away a few years later, probably like 5 or 6 years later, back to Regina to have an easier family life in Regina. It's cheaper to live there. And I've seen them twice since they moved. This was the second time that I saw them. We went for dinner earlier in the week. And as I was telling you earlier, my friend that's from Regina is sort of like the linchpin for the group of friends that we used to hang out with.
Right.
We could totally call any of those people in the friend group, but there's just always that one person that's sort of like the leader, I guess, or linchpin. And they are that to this group. So it was nice to see all my old friends, hang out with them. And like I was telling you earlier, I miss their personalities more than I thought, their mannerisms. One of the people in that group is probably the person I respect the most in this world. And I didn't realize how much I missed him.
Right.
Because I think about him and miss the things that I could have been doing with that group of friends. And it was just really nice to see those people and hang out with them and sort of relive and recount the things we used to do together. And it was really nice. And we made a big effort we didn't make a big effort, but we made sure that we made time to see them
Right.
as much as we could while they were here. I kind of pushed a Halloween party back on Saturday a little bit because I wanted to spend as much time with my friends as I could. And so, yeah, that was sort of like, my random topic is, I guess I just didn't really realize what some people in my life meant to me until I finally got to see them again years later. And good people are good people. I don't know, just kind of missed it. And man, if they ever move back, I'd really like that. It'd be nice.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's interesting that you reconnected with people that you hadn't seen for a long time. And I think about some plants, and they can live in a desert and not get rain for months or years. I don't know if there's any plant that can survive for years. Don't quote me, but like they can go for a long time. But as soon as they get a little bit of rain or a little bit of connection, in this case between your friends, it's like you hit it off, just like you never left off. Or like nothing ever changed, and you have all these great stories. But other people, they grow apart for a reason. Sometimes it's purely circumstance, and when you reconnect, you find your values are still the same. You still, you still can have a great conversation, and you're right back at it. But other times, when I'm thinking about some people that I've fallen out of contact with, sometimes it's because there was a divergence in values, or now I'm in a different part of my life now. You're still out going to the nightclub every evening. I left that lifestyle behind a long time ago. Like, so it just kind of depends, on the reason why you fell out of contact to a certain extent.
You were never in that life. I can't see you going out to nightclubs and partying.
It was a brief time when I was very young, but yeah, it's
yeah.
I mean, what about you? Like, you've always seemed fairly proper as well. I can't see you as a young man. I don't know.
I have histories with things. We'll leave it at that.
Sounds good.
I have changed a lot. Let's put it that way.
Got it.
Nothing dark and law breaking. Well, yeah. I don't want to say that.
Yeah, don't tell your party paladin about any histories.
But it was again, I've already said it was nice, but to know that they're still just as good friends. The only difference is that there's more stories to tell because the time between when which we see each other is a while. And so there's just more things to talk about. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel that way with a lot of people that actually part of the fab community here locally. Like we have quite a few people that only show up for pre-releases, or they only show up once in a very blue moon, just for a PQ. And one of them, Anthony, who, he had they had a kid. And as a result, between the kid and work, he just so rarely comes out to events, but it's a pleasure every time he comes out. And he even top 8'd the draft.
Yeah.
Like, this
is awesome.
Yeah, it was great. I'd love to see it. Like, when you have good people like that, it just makes it all the more special when they do come out.
You kind of made me think of an interesting thought in that they're not people you see all the time, but they're familiar when you do see them.
Yeah.
I might not know everything about your life, but when you show up, you're still a friend, you're still a compatriot, part of the community, and you may have been missed, but you're not forgotten. And it's always nice to see people come out of the woodworks whenever they can find time and come out.
All right. Well, anything else to add, Shea, before we wrap up today?
No, I think we've done pretty good.
All right. Well, you can find us on IP2 Podcast on YouTube, IP2 Podcast on Twitter, and IP2 Podcast on Blue Sky. Thank you so much. So for everything that you said up to now, in editing, can you please just speed it up and put the Benny Hill music? Like,
Sure.
because this is quite a convoluted series of team moves
I
that
know.
you made.
Yeah. So the Sunday was quite a man. I don't even know if I can recount all the changes of my team.
Hmm.
But when it was announced, I was messaged right away by a few people.
Yeah.
Which thank you very much for those people that think that I can play limited. I appreciate it. I'm not a good limited player. So I had a conversation with a few people, and we actually set up a sort of like a 6-person group
Yep.
to figure out how we were going to do 2 teams. And yep, those 6 people were good. We sort of had loose teams made up. And then about a week before the event, I did a double check on the players on my team. So I think it was Travis and Arthur's at the time.
Yep.
And Travis was like, no, I have new engagement that I can't go to the event on the weekend. So that's no problem. We go to reach out. Arthur and I go to reach out to, I think, some folks in Edmonton at that point. I think we reached out to Kale, and I'm not sure if he was planning on going, but he made some time for us. So he joined our team, which was cool. And then Arthur's wife had an accident and like shattered her elbow in 2 places, and she needed orthoscopic surgery on her elbow. So she is expecting a baby. So they weren't comfortable with him going up on the weekend with her new injury. Makes total sense. So then I had to find another player, and somebody had told me that Luke was looking to go up to Edmonton and play in the he was already going to Edmonton and he would potentially play in the team event. So I messaged him and he said, yep, I might do it. I'll think about it. And I was like, okay, cool. Just let me know. Then I got a message from Travis saying that there's a new guy that's looking for a team. He's like, if you want him, don't expect to be competitive. But he's there. And I was like, okay, cool. So on the Sunday before the Sunday, I was like, Luke, I need an answer. And he's like, nope, I'm not going to go. I'm like, cool. I messaged Travis. Kale and I will take the new guy. Cool. He's like, I'll message him and let him know. So that's all good. And then like half an hour later, Travis messages me back. He's like, new guy can't come. I was like, okay. So I have to find another person now. So we reached out to Kevin, who I honestly thought was if he was going to go with like his family because his 1 or 2 sons play Flesh and Blood. So I thought he was already on a team there if he was playing. And he got back to me. He's like, yep, I'll play with you. And I was like, awesome. Got a team. It's all sorted out. No big deal. Then the day of the event, Andrew and Ethan's team, their third member was Jake. He got called into a meeting at work at 11 o'clock when the event was supposed to start.
On a Sunday.
Okay. So it's not, he plays for the Edmonton Elks. He plays CFL football. Oh. And it was the end of the season. So they got called in for something. I don't know. So he had to go to that. So now Ethan and Andrew don't have a team. And that morning, Andrew, myself, Thomas, and Kevin went to go play disc golf. And this is my first time playing disc golf. It was a lot of fun, actually. It was it was a cold. It was like 4 degrees or something like that, but it was fun. Nice little warm up before the event. So we find out about that, and we kind of talk about it. I was like, we can probably find another person. So Kevin's, I think, brother was an option. And so I was like, well, if Kevin's brother's an option to play, how about I join Ethan and Andrew's team, and then Kevin can play, Kevin's brother can play with Kevin and Kale, people he knows. And so I ended up switching teams in the end. So there was a lot going on before the event, and even on the day of it, just the team still didn't really sort itself out. And I'm sorry to all the listeners that don't know who these people are. It's really hard to track. So long story short, I changed teams on the day of.